Go live. And you are live.
Shalom and welcome everyone. I am Ann Sampson, Director on the Board of Congregation Bina and your host for this series. We are delighted with the great response we have received to this, the third event in the Sephardic Mizrahi Jewish Speakers Series. Your support is greatly appreciated. Alan Herman of the Canadian Institute for Jewish Research and I agreed several months ago that Congregation Bina and CIJR would jointly launch this series. Thanks very much, Alan, for all that you have done and continue to do in pulling this series together. We are proud and delighted to have this series supported by the following 7 Jewish organizations: Congregation Bina, Canadian Institute for Jewish Research, Kulanu Canada, Beth Raim Synagogue, the Lodzer Center Congregation, Jews Against Anti-Semitism Canada, and Canadians for Israel's Legal Rights. Our heartfelt thanks to all our supporting organizations who work so hard on behalf of Israel and the Jewish community, both at home and around the world. Thank you to Ariella Daniels for designing the flyer and to Fleur Sampson for looking after all the technical details for us, to Anil Schonberg, who is here to help with the technical stuff today, and to Anna Glistrain for standing by in case Cheryl runs into trouble with sharing her screen on the presentation today, since the connection from India is not always that stable. There will be a question and answer session following the presentation. Please use the chat only to submit questions for the speaker. Thank you. This morning's, I should say, webinar will be an hour and 15 minutes long, approximately, and is being recorded. The recording will be available on YouTube Live. The link to the recording is always sent to everyone who registers a few days after the event. If you registered and were unable for any reason later to actually attend the session, you will still receive the link to the recording. If you cannot find the email with the link for the recording, please check your trash, since it comes from Congregation Bina. It is now my honor and privilege to introduce our guest speaker, Cheryl Rebello. Cheryl has done her MBA in health management and teaches at a local hospital. She is a member of the Indian Film Writers Association and the Indian Film Producers Association. The screenplay for the children's film Joy of Giving, that was produced in Mumbai and aired on a Canadian religious channel, was written by her. Cheryl has also written and produced the documentary film, The Forgotten Stew, directed by Richard Young, which was selected and received an appreciation award at the Dada Saheb Phalke Nasik International Film Festival. It was aired at a private event in Mumbai and at Jabalpur. At the international conference, Jews of Portugal and the Spanish Portuguese Jewish diaspora, held in Lisbon in June 2018, she presented her paper on identity and ethnic struggles, philo-Semitism and anti-Semitism on the Jews of Goa from 1500 to 1800 CE and the Portuguese Inquisition in Goa. The conference was held at the School of Arts and Humanities of the University of Lisbon and Oporto. It was organized by Bar Ilan University, the Center of History of the University of Lisbon, the University of Oporto, the Ashkelon Academic College, the Dan Center, and the Ben Zvi Institute. On August 12, 2018, she presented at Limud, India, organized by the Joint Distribution Committee in Mumbai. And in 2019, she presented in Toronto. At present, she is in the process of writing an article on the same topic she presented at the conference in 2018, which the Dan University will publish in a book. She's also currently in the process of completing 2 documentary films. The first one is Sound of Memories, the Jews of Goa who had faced the Portuguese Inquisition, and the second is Nomadic Roots on the Banjara tribe of Gadag, India. It is evident from everything that Cheryl is an extremely busy lady, and we greatly appreciate her taking time from her very busy schedule in Mumbai to speak with us this evening. So welcome, Cheryl. We are thrilled to have you share your research with us today. This floor is all yours.
Thank you, Anne. And hello, everyone. In 2008, while sorting through some personal belongings of my mother's, I found a key. That's it. Really 4-inch large key, which belonged to my grandfather's house in Goa. I had never been to this house, and while discussing this topic about Goa, my friend Richard shared with me about the Jews who were in Goa and who had faced the Inquisition. I would now like to share my slides on the Jews of Goa. So this is the key which belonged to my grandfather's house, which I had never seen. My grandfather on my maternal side was from Goa. The family surname was Lobo in Portuguese, which my grandfather told me when I was very young, which meant wolf. Portuguese was spoken at home. Regarding religious traditions, they were similar to some Jewish customs, like the separation of dough before baking. This brought about my personal research and journey to Goa and Portugal. I will be taking you on this journey, which I hope will give you an insight that once upon a time, there were Jews who came from Portugal and Spain and settled in Goa. They were families of great repute: navigators, astronomers, physicians, traders, advisors, and interpreters who contributed to the economy of Portuguese Goa. Goa was the capital of Portuguese India from the time Alfonso de Albuquerque conquered it from the local ruler, the Sultan of Bijapur, on November 10, 1510. It was the second capital of Portugal after Lisbon and brought in more revenue than that of Lisbon. A famous Portuguese proverb was, "One who has seen Goa has seen Lisbon." Goa is one of the favorite tourist destinations in India. However, beneath the surface hides a long, sinister history, the Portuguese Inquisition, and even today, no one wants to share their ideas about it. There are claims that this principal bell in a church at Panjim, Goa, was the Inquisition bell, which was once located in the Cathedral of Catherine and rang to announce the auto de fe, or the act of faith, which was a tribunal set up to punish heretics who did not profess the Catholic faith. The victims were tortured, tried, and burned alive at the stake. They were mainly Jews and New Christians or conversos who were forced to formally vow allegiance to the church, but practice their faith in secret. The Faith of Judaism. Authors like Charles Delon, Jan Hurbain Lishkotin, Francis Pyrad was in Goa between 1608 and 1610, John Fryer in the late 17th century, and Nicholas Manuel have mentioned the tolling of this bell at the Inquisition. I had a very deep desire to hear this bell and experience its sound. And in August 2018, while doing my research at the church, I noticed the bell ringer make his way to ring the bell. It was 12 noon. I quickly took my camera, which became my travel companion, and captured the sound of the ring. You can now experience the sound of the ringing of this bell, which mapped the destiny of horror of innocent people who were condemned at the Inquisition.
Historians record history, but sound is recorded in our minds when repeated and heard continuously from generation to generation. It is like listening to the oral Torah. Both written and oral testimonies are important to understand a period of the past and preserves history for generations. A quote of Charles Delon. The great bell of the cathedral tolled a little before sunrise as a signal to the multitude to assemble for the auto de fe. The image that is overlapping, you can see in the background, on the right, a church which was near to the Viceroy's palace where the prisoners were imprisoned. In the middle is the Cathedral of St. Catherine, which originally housed the bell of the Inquisition. Hearing the sound of the bell brought back the horrors of the Inquisition. This is the river Mandovi, where the Goa Tribunal was set up on the banks of the river, and the executions and slow burning alive of those who were found guilty of heresy, mostly conversos and Jews, was on the Campo de São Lázaro, facing the sea. This tribunal had authority over all the Portuguese colonies in East Africa, India, China, and the East Indies.
I am indebted to my friends, especially to Richard Young, who started me on this journey and who will be editing the documentary Sound Memories. I am also thankful to several authors like Antonio Jose Sarvia, author of The Murano Factory, and a special tribute to Charles Delon, a victim of the Inquisition, who wrote his personal story in 1687 in the account of the Inquisition of Goa. To Jose Nicola de Fonseca, author of a historical and archaeological sketch of the city of Goa, 1878, who mentions a street by the name Rua de Judea, or the Street of the Jews. So precise were these two books in their locations, I did not need a GPS to navigate my route in the city of Goa, even after 5 centuries. I traced the footsteps of Charles Dillon from Bassein to the outskirts of Bombay to Goa and followed his journey till he was tried at Xavier's Church. In Goa, I was surprised to see a house which was not lived in, with the Star of David in its wall. If you can see, here is the star and here is the inset, a little larger picture of the same star which is on this wall over here. The first auto de fe in Goa was held in 1562. Figueria lists 27 auto de fes held at Goa from 1561 to 1623. Morera lists 71 auto de fes in Goa from 1600 to 1773. The corruption and the cruelty of the Goa Inquisition staff far outdid their counterparts in Portugal. So let us see some of the famous Jews at the Monument of Discoveries in Lisbon, built in honor to those who contributed to the discoveries of that time. It is dedicated to Prince Henry, the Navigator. As I gazed down at a map of the world below the monument, I saw Portugal, which was not a very big country, but had mastered the sea routes and colonized from the west to the far east, and their headquarters in the east was Goa. Here is Goa. At the base of the Monument of Discoveries resembles a Portuguese sailing ship with Prince Henry, the Navigator, in the lead. Fifth in line here is Pedro Nunes, a Portuguese Jew, a new Christian, or a converso. He was an author, mathematician, navigator, and astronomer who invented the nonninus in 1542, an instrument used for finer measurements for navigation, and who had come to Goa. Second in line after Henry the Navigator is João Gonçalves Zarco, also a Jew, a knight to Prince Henry. According to historians Mascarenhas and De Silva, he was a navigator and commanded the fleets of Prince Henry. On the left side of the carvel or the ship at the base of the monument, fourth in line is Pedro Alvares Cabral, a navigator who left for Brazil using the copper astrolabe, a navigation device invented by Abraham Zacuto. Both these men were instrumental in charting the maps in charting the maps to Goa. Cabral's fleet landed on Anjidiva Island, which is part of Goa. Ana Mendes Godinho, when she was Portugal's Secretary of State for Tourism in 2016, said, "The Jewish communities have had crucial roles in the Portuguese history, namely Pedro Alvares Cabral. It is quite interesting to remember that in the 15th century, 20% of the Portuguese population were Jewish." So we always say, as she quotes, I quote her words, that every Portuguese may have a Jewish origin. In 2013, Portugal became the second country after Israel to pass a law of return for Jews and their descendants. I visited the Torre de Tombo, the central archives for the history of the Portuguese Inquisition records from 1497 onwards, pertaining to the Portuguese colonies. However, I was unable to obtain the records of the Inquisition at Goa. As I mentioned earlier, most of the Jews who came to India were from Portugal and had settled around the former Portuguese dominions and territories like Goa, Daman, and Diu. Abraham Zacuto, Pedro Nunes, João Baptista Lavana, and Durat Gomes de Solis were instrumental in charting the waters along the Indian coast. They were the first Portuguese Jews to arrive in Goa. But first, I would like to state that the Jews lived along the Malabar coast of India prior to the Portuguese entry. It dates back to the time of King Solomon, who traded with India. Also, Thomas and Bartholomew, both Jews, came to India around 50 CE with the gospel to preach to the Jewish community. The original Hebrew text of the Gospel of Matthew was brought by Bartholomew. Further proof is an extract of a letter by David Rahabi, a leader of the Jewish community in Cochin, to Rabbi Tubia Boaz, who was abroad. He stated in his letter, the arrival of the community on the Malabar coast dated from the captivity of the Second Temple in 68 CE. Some 10,000 Jews of both sects landed on the Malabar coast and settled at four centers, Kragno, Palor, Madai, and Polot. Karur Synagogue in Cochin at the time of its renovation. Now it has been completed. The renovation has been completed. And this is a remembrance stone in the same synagogue at Cochin. It's the remembrance stone of David Castiel. I would like to mention two prominent Sephardic Jewish families who were traders, the Castiel family and the Bocaro family. Some of its members were new Christians or conversos. The Inquisition was so demonic that Antonio Bocaro from the Bocaro family betrayed Samuel Castiel, a fellow Jew, and even his own brother, Emmanuel Bocaro, also known as Jacob Rosales. This is the family tree of the Castiels. And this is the Bocaro family tree. Here you can see Emmanuel Bocaro, Francis or Jacob Rosales, and Antonio Bocaro, who betrayed his own brother, and Samuel Castiel. In the Life from the Files of the Inquisition, the tortured memories of Jacob Rosales, also known as Emmanuel Bocaro, and Anna Rosales, his wife, between 1624 to 1662. Jacob was a physician, astronomer, astrologer, and a mathematician. He was repeatedly denounced at the Inquisition courts in Goa, Lisbon, and in Spain. Many members of the family lived as pious Catholics or conversos in Lisbon, Madrid, Brazil, Amsterdam, and in Goa. I will now commence my journey to Goa following Charles Delon's book, who was taken as a prisoner for heresy from Daman. His ship, which was carrying several prisoners for the same reason, docked at Bessin, which is in the outskirts of Bombay, en route to Goa on the 1st January 1674. Bassein, today is known as Vasai, was the headquarters of the Portuguese in the Konkan area of India. Charles Delon spent a few days as a prisoner at this fort. As I passed through these massive iron fort gates, which have survived for almost 5 centuries, I gazed around at the fort, which today is in ruins. On the 7th January, Delon left from here and reached Goa on the 14th of January. The Goa Tribunal of the Portuguese Holy Office was set up in the Viceroy's Palace on the banks of the river Mandovi. The two first inquisitors sent out from Portugal were Alexio Diaz Falco and Francisco Marques Botelho. From the docks, I walked up the Rua de Ereta under the arch of the Viceroys. It was in the same area that Alfonso de Albuquerque and his army fought against the Sultan and conquered Goa in 1510. This was the road where Charles Delon and other prisoners would have walked. Walking up the road, on the left is the site of the Viceroy's Palace, where the prisoners were imprisoned to be tried at the Inquisition. Originally, it was the Sultan's Palace. Today, only this reconstructed gate of the Sultan of Bujakur's palace can be seen. Now, after we have come right up to the Viceroy's Palace, which was also used as a prison for the prisoners who were going to be tried at the Inquisition, I would like to take a break from the journey of Delon at this very location where he was imprisoned. The Cajetan Church is located on the same site. I will fast forward our journey, switching to the book of Jose Nicalo de Fonseca, author of a historical and archaeological sketch of the city of Goa. The first 9 years of Portuguese rule in Goa had an arrival of large numbers of Portuguese Jews who settled in Goa to avoid the Inquisition in Spain and Portugal. This trading port attracted Jews and enabled them to do their business successfully here. We are now looking at the Rua de Judias, the street of the Jews, which Fonseca mapped and wrote about. Here, well-renowned Jews lived. I would like to mention a few famous Jews who lived on this street. Fernão Vaz Dourado, the famous nautical cartographer and one of the best of that time, was born in Goa in 1520 to 1580 and lived on this street. Even to this day, his maps are being used for navigation. Geronimo Diaz, a famous doctor, in 1543 was accused of keeping a Torah scroll in his house, was garroted and burnt. Others were executed or imprisoned and sent to trial in Lisbon or in Goa itself. Isaac and Abraham Almocino from Fez and the Martin brothers were the famous and wealthiest diamond merchants of Goa at that time. Goa was Europe's main supplier of uncut diamonds. There are only 3 houses on the street today of Rua de Judias, which do not date back more than 10 years. I visited the families who lived here. They are not Jews, but caretakers of the church. This property was given to the church as recorded 7 years after the Inquisition commenced. It would be no surprise to know one of the main factors of the Inquisition was confiscation of properties. Opposite the street of the Jews, as you can see, running right across Down the road is a fence. So let us see what is over and beyond this fence. It's the Augustine Church complex. Yes, the grass sure looks greener on this side, but this church is in complete ruins. Now, what is inside the church complex? And what is the most unique structure at the Augustine Church is a mikveh. This is the mikveh. And just below, you can see there is another smaller pool which has been covered. The large pool has 7 steps going down, and it shows every aspect of a mikveh. And another smaller pool, which I showed you earlier, is a yard away, which was probably used as a cistern from where the main water to the mikveh was filled. This is the mikveh, it's empty and in the next picture, you can see the floor of the mikveh. And here it is filled with water, but this is actually the rainwater which gathered in 2018. I went there, it was the rainy season, so the mikveh was full. On my first visit, the 7 steps going down into the mikveh were intact. Subsequently, on my following visits, few of them were broken. As the first, second, and third step are broken. The distance from the Street of the Jews is about a 3-minute walk into the Augustine complex. The entrance is being sealed. There is every possibility that this was a synagogue when you take into consideration on keeping the laws of Shabbat. Large stone plaque on a wall depicts an eagle. The carving clearly shows an eagle here is the eagle carrying a Torah box or a Torah scroll in a box, and on top it's the 10 Commandments. An engraving which looks like the 10 Commandments. Colored mosaic tiles on a wall in the ruins of the Augustine Church, where entry is strictly prohibited. I noticed the design on the tiles were almost similar in design and color to the ceramic tiles in white, blue, and yellow at the Kadori Mikor Hayim Synagogue in Porto, Portugal. The tiles are along the wall of the Kadori Mikor Hayim Synagogue and at the ladies section on the top. Walking a few kilometers down from the Street of the Jews to the west from the church complex at the intersection of Rua al dos Namorados is a parking lot which is thought to be the house and botany garden of the very famous Jewish physician and botanist Garcia de Orata. He and his sister Catherine de Orata were arrested on October 28, 1568 at the Inquisition in Goa. Catherine was executed at the Goa Auto da Fe, October 25, 1569. The manor house or Bombay Castle, Casa da Orata, in the island of Bombay, today known as Mumbai, was constructed by Garcia de Orata and was one of the oldest defense systems in the city. Garcia the Orator had leased the island of Bombay from the King of Portugal between 1554 and 1570. He was the Bill Gates of his time. The island of Bombay was later given as a dowry to King Charles II of England on his marriage to Catherine of Braganza of Portugal. Garcia the Orator pioneered tropical medicine and authored several medicine books, one being the Book of Medicine on India's tropical plants and medicines. He was sentenced to death posthumously, and his remains were exhumed and burnt with his effigy at the Goa Auto de Fe on December 4th, 1580. His estates were confiscated. A public garden in the city of Tanjung, Goa is named after Garcia the Orator. However, there is no account of his biography recorded in the garden or his great contribution to medicine in India. The Portuguese Now let's go back to the journey of Charles Delon. If you remember, we left from the site where he was imprisoned and that was the Viceroy's palace. So after we passed under the Viceroy's gate and the Viceroy's palace, imagine 2 years have passed with tortures in interrogations. And on the 11th of Jan, 1676, at 5:30 a.m., as the sun rose, the bell of the cathedral started to toll to announce the Auto de Fe. The prisoners stepped out on the Rua de Areta in shame, grief, and terror due to the uncertainty of their fate. To the right, you can see the Cathedral of Catherine, just part of it. And this is where the bell of the Inquisition was housed and where the prisoners heard the bell ring. Catherine Cathedral, which initially housed the Inquisition bell till the bell tower collapsed in 1776. As you can notice, there's only one bell tower on the church. Interrogations and tortures were also done in private underground cells in the church. The prisoners, who were mostly conversos and Jews, as stated by Delon, and some other religious backgrounds were also there, were paraded on the principal streets in front of an immense crowd which came from all parts of India and lined the roads by which the prisoners passed. The crowds that attended were given notice in advance from the pulpit in the most distant churches in India. The accused arrived at the church of Francis Xavier after an hour of walking, fatigued, and waited for their trial. This picture is taken in 2018. After a long ceremony of sermons and accusations, the victims were convicted of heresy. They advanced separately to meet their fate on the banks of the river where they were burnt alive. Probably these old benches which are here would be the same where the accused sat. The garments which the accused wore at the time of the Inquisition marked the fate of the prisoners. If the flames on the garments went upwards, like you can see here, there's a head and there's some smoke going upwards, it meant that they would be burnt alive. If the flames went downwards, they would be spared death, but would be put to the galleys. And this was the fate of Delon. Another picture after the tribunal, which you can see they have left the church and they are in a procession to go to the Campo de Lazaro. The bones of those who had been convicted posthumously were carried in boxes, as here you can see them carrying the boxes, and their effigies, these are the effigies, were burnt along with their bones at the stake. This was the fate of Garcia the orator. The burnings on the Campo de Lazio facing the sea, where large multitudes attended and came from all over to watch the tribunal. This is the martyr's pillar in remembrance of those who had died, but no mention is made of the Inquisition. On February 10, 1774, the Marquis de Pombal transmitted to the Governor General of Portuguese India the royal decision to abolish the Goa Inquisition. All its prisoners were released and the archives were shipped to Lisbon to the Torre de Tombol. However, after Pombal's resignation on March 1, 1777, the Goa Inquisition was reintroduced and the archives reshipped to Goa. By a decree of June 15, 1812, the Inquisition in Goa was abolished forever. In 2018, this is what I observed at the Augustine Church complex. A small portion of the fence separating the Street of the Jews from the complex had been opened, and deep excavations were going on. My curiosity was aroused, and I managed to slip inside the complex and observe what was going on. A portion very close and under the mikveh was being excavated, and huge stones from the site were being removed. There was a very large underground hall beneath the church, and I observed a portion very close where the mikveh was. There was another room which I could see. However, I could not remain there for long because I was unauthorized to be in that place. If the archaeology is destroyed to change, potential Jewish existing data could be lost forever. This will deny the opportunity of research to future generations, especially if one is trying to trace their Jewish heritage. I visited other sites which also had mikvehs, but now belong to other Jewish institutions. The problem to be faced is religious and cultural issues. I believe we have some responsibility to preserve the knowledge of the existence of the Jews who lived in Goa, since there is not much known about their descendants. At the time of the Inquisition, many of the conversos and Jews fled to neighboring cities like Bombay, Mangalore, and Cochin. What you see here are the stones from the excavation site dumped into a ravine. I also have got some of the stones. If you can see, if I pin me down right now and see you can see the stones which I collected from the site. To target a larger audience, I am in the process of making a documentary film on the Jews of Goa titled Sound Memories. a Jewish street in Lisbon were a memorial and an apology for the Inquisition on the Jews. My greatest wish is if something like this could be done in Goa to acknowledge the Jewish presence in Goa. Another apology plaque on the wall of a street in Porto. To conversers and Jews, recommendations to improve knowledge about the Jewish community of Goa could be made if several organizations came together and helped to strengthen and raise concern in documenting the Sephardic Jews of Goa by books and by media, or by just putting a road sign on the street of the Jews, just as this plaque has been put on the street of the Jews in Porto, Portugal. Academically, a curriculum could be introduced at universities or in Jewish cultural institutions for the youth and adults, especially in Portugal, Spain, and in India, for the study of the Sephardic Jews in Goa. I would like to thank all of you for showing an interest on the Sephardic Jews of Goa. But before I take any questions, I would like to ask the audience one question. If there are descendants of conversos were Jews who were forced to convert to Catholicism. If there were descendants of conversos in churches today, how will the present Jewish community accept them in the 21st century? Would it be the same rejection as the Moranos or conversos in Europe faced in the 19th and the 20th century? Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. It was pretty moving to listen to you and to hear the horrors of the Inquisition in India. But we'll move on right now to a Q&A session. And I will pose some questions that have come in from our listeners. And we will spend some time doing that. The first question I got was, I've read that the Inquisition in Portugal ended in 1837. Was that also true for Goa? I believe you said 1812?
Yes, it was 1812.
That it ended in Goa?
Yes.
Okay.
It did end in 1777, but it was reintroduced again after the Marquis of Pombal had resigned. Yeah. And so the records were reshipped from the Torre de Tombo back to Goa.
Okay. How large was the Jewish population in Goa? And how long was there a Jewish community in Goa?
Yes, this is what we actually don't know because there are no descendants which can be traced of the population, the Sephardic Jews. But whatever I could share was what I managed to get regarding, the research which I have been doing. And we do not know how large it was, but it could have been quite large because Goa was one of the main trading centers in the East. And they had traders coming in from all over Europe, from the Middle East and from the Arab countries, and also from the Far East like Indonesia. And as I said, Goa was the second capital after Lisbon, and it brought in a great revenue. And Jews, as we all know, that they were very enterprising and very business minded. And yes, there were merchants and traders like the Martin brothers, and they were traders in the uncut diamonds. So there would be definitely more. I think it would have been a very thriving Jewish community who lived over there.
Okay. was there any period in which Jews lived safely in Goa?
I have, because I have just started my research, and from what I have seen at the beginning, there was a safety for the Jews. That's why they left from Portugal and Spain and came to Goa and settled down there, because they were trying to escape the Inquisition. But later on, the Inquisition it's a little bit, I should say, I should not be mentioning, but because of the church and one of the most, revered saints of that place had introduced the Inquisition. And that's the time when it became unsafe for the Jews to live in Goa. Okay. So they left Goa, and that's why there is no account of how many people live there and where they dispersed. But we do know that they came to Bombay, Cochin, and to Bangalore. They fled to these cities, and we cannot, because they were, conversos. You couldn't really pinpoint how many Jews and conversos were there.
Okay. Someone wants to know, what is the significance of the stones that were excavated and thrown in the ravine?
Yeah, actually, there was no, there's no significance, as I have the stones here also. If people have not seen it, I just collected it from the site because when they removed these big stones, I just took the smaller ones. I saw this big, large hall, which was underneath the main church and almost touching the mikveh, which is on top of that portion. So I took it thinking maybe if I could give it to some archaeologists and who could, study, geologists who could study the stones and find out if there is any, they could probably trace something of any Jewish significance in the stones itself.
Is there any Jewish life in Goa today?
No, there's no Jewish life, but the Chabad, that is the recent thing.
Okay.
Chabad is still over there.
Chabad is there.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you personally related to any Jews from Goa? That you know
I cannot tell.
It's hard to tell, right? It's hard to know.
Yeah, it's hard to know.
It's very hard to know. Most people have commented how much they appreciate what you have done. And this was such an eye-opener. I hope we will welcome all conversos. I never knew any of this. I hope your movie comes out soon. Looking forward to watching your documentary. Excellent work. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your hard work. And here someone says, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob bless you and multiply the fruits of your research. Okay, and we hope that the excavations will be preserved. And I loved your idea of an educational curriculum. Any thoughts on doing something like that?
Yes, we could start something, but as I said, we require some external, organization to help out in this. And also we do face a lot of cultural and religious issues from the other communities. So it is quite a sensitive area, which we'll be treading on.
Oh, okay. All right. Someone suggested that you contact Rachel Maslia, she was from Calcutta. Her father was Rabbi Maslia from Calcutta. Okay. And she's a music scholar and she's a descendant of Baghdadi Jews. She lives in New York. Okay. And perhaps to expand the research, she may have some knowledge. I don't know if she does because her family lived exclusively in Calcutta. But it's not a bad idea, especially for any musical component. It might be good.
Yes.
Okay, to be in touch with her. Her name is Rachel Maslia, and I'll send it to you later.
Okay, right. Thanks, Sam.
Okay, yeah. Now, someone says that on Kalanguta beach. There is a
Kalangut
big
Beach.
church. Yeah,
Yes.
there's a big church on a hill. Was it also involved in the Inquisition?
No, not all the churches. It was just specific churches that were involved in the Inquisition. One was that Cathedral of St. Catherine, and one was Francis Xavier Church, which where they went and they were the Inquisition was held there, and some other smaller churches in that area. Kalangut, none of those churches had any involvement. Even where the bell is right now at the Panjim Church, it didn't have any involvement at the time of the Inquisition. The bell tower had collapsed at the Cathedral of Catherine, and so the bell was transferred from that church to the fort to St. Augustine Church, which had an involvement where it was across the street of the Jews. And from there also the bell tower collapsed, and then it was taken much later on to Fort Aguada, and from Fort Aguada it has come to the Panjim Church at Panjim.
Okay. It's interesting because I've been to Goa many times, but I've never knew anything about there ever being a Jewish community there. So it's an eye opener to learn, what really happened that we never learned, in Indian history. Even it's not even recorded in Indian history.
Yes, it is not recorded. So it was an eye opener also for me, Anne, because I also was not aware of it till a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it's more recent, isn't it?
Yeah.
Cheryl, I don't know if there's anything else. No, I don't see any other questions coming through at the moment. But what I will say is, I as you know, I was born and raised in Bombay, India, and in all the time I lived there, and even when I visited Goa over the years, as I said, I never heard about any Jews in Goa, and I did have many Goan friends. Okay. Even one who spoke Portuguese. Okay, that was interesting, but it was Catholic. I first learned about the Jews of Goa from an article written by Nissim Moses on the subject. Yeah. And you probably know Nissim Moses, right? I knew that the Cochin Jews suffered at the hands of the Portuguese and were actually saved by the Hindu Maharaj of Cochin. That's why the Inquisition did not reach Cochin. It didn't, didn't sort of act in the same way there. However, today, you have unveiled much more about a part of history that remained hidden and was never openly reported or recorded regarding a long lost and forgotten community of Jews. Would you call them Marano Jews or just
conversos? Yeah, conversos.
Okay.
Yeah. Means I know in Europe they would even call them Marano Jews.
Marano Jews. Okay.
Yeah.
We owe a great deal to you for unearthing much more about them and their tragic fate, and for throwing a spotlight on the very long reach of the Portuguese Inquisition. I am glad that you are in the process of making a film on the Sephardic Jews of Goa, and that this history can be recorded for posterity that way. I hope you will work with us to arrange a screening of this film here in Toronto following its release, and that you will be able to come here yourself. It has been a pleasure meeting you, getting to know you, and having you as our speaker this evening. And we thank you for teaching us so much about this hitherto obscure part of Jewish history. Before we leave today, I would like to announce that our next webinar in the Sephardic Mizrahi Jewish Speaker Series is scheduled for Sunday, June 20th at 8 p.m. in the evening. Our speaker will be Dr. David Ben-Susan, past president of the United Sephardic Community of Quebec. He is the author of a number of literary works, including a Bible commentary. He will help us understand the clear distinction between Sephardi and Mizrahi Jews. His presentation is entitled Sephardi/Mizrahi Experience, Spanish and Eastern Jewry in History and Today. We look forward to seeing you all on June 20th Until then, stay safe and healthy. Shalom and bye for now.
Shalom.